Let it fly.
Hello, guys, and welcome once again to the Sidelines Pass. I'll be your host, Robert Gardner. Joining me today is Joshua Thompson and Chris Courtney. Today, in Sidelines Pass episode 3.2, we will be discussing the biggest fight in boxing history, Floyd Mayweather Jr. versus Manny Pacquiao, which is set to go down this Saturday. Guys, first off, not only is this expected to be the most lucrative fight ever, it's going to be the most expensive fight for fans to view. With the standard definition pay-per-view going for $89.95 and the high definition pay-per-view going for $99.95. Josh, what do you think about this price tag? How is it going to affect the viewership?
Oh my lord. Let's go ahead and start out with why I'm not watching the fight. To be completely honest, the price tag is astronomical. There is absolutely no way I can justify paying for this fight. There's no way I can justify going out and trying to find this fight at any bar locally. Given that I live in a very rural place in Santa Cruz, California, and that no bar downtown wants to play this fight, considering the ultimate consequences of given fights and everything that happens at your local bar. But honestly, when you put together the sum total of what I'm going to spend for watching a fight for this, I honestly believe that there are just too many what ifs that can happen that would make this fight not worth it. For example, if either fighter gets knocked out in the first through third round, then you feel like you've been played. There's no way that I'm going to be spending that amount of money. Five or six, okay, maybe I feel like I've gotten something out of this fight, but it's still not enough, and I still want more. I think that for paying $100 for HD, because let's face it, no one's got a standard definition TV these days. I really think that you're really hoping that you've got about 20 friends so everyone can pitch in.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it too. Yeah, first of all, the standard definition thing. If you're paying $90 to watch that in standard definition, someone needs to take your damn debit card away because
Go
that
buy
there
Jesus.
there is just no reason on earth for a human being in this day and age to pay for something in standard definition, let alone spend $90 on something that's standard definition, let alone a boxing match in standard definition. Um, yeah, no, I'm kind of in the same boat that Josh is in. I think that with the fight, certainly it has the hype surrounding it, and a lot of people are going to be very interested in watching and seeing how that fight plays out. I'm definitely interested to see how it plays out. Fortunately, I won't have the dilemma of watching or deciding whether or not I'm going to watch the fight because I unfortunately will be working during that time. Uh, but with that said, it's I think the best way to probably do it is like Josh said, you get a bunch of people, you get a bunch of friends over, have everyone pitch in $5 or $10, whatever it is, and then you can kind of go from there and have your own little fight party. I think that's kind of a cool idea. It can be fun. I don't know if the match is going to live up to it. I hope it does for everybody out there who's paying because I'll tell you what, I'm still feeling burned from Tyson Lennox Lewis like 15 years ago. Uh, so yeah, no, I hope it turns out to be a thriller because look, let's be honest, this is the matchup that people have been wanting for a very long time. I wish it would have happened about 4 or 5 years ago. I think that would have been a much more interesting match. I think you would have had a lot more hype around it. It's a little bit disappointing that both parties couldn't come together sooner and make this happen. I know that there's a lot of things kind of going back and forth between both boxers, uh, but it's people are going to pay for it. It's still going to be probably one of the more hotly talked about sporting events of the entire year. It already is, and we're still 5 days out from the match. So yeah, I think it is. I think it is a little bit too expensive, but same time, I guess I could see why people are clamoring for it, because it's been something everybody's been looking forward to for a long time.
Now, by pricing it this high, I think obviously the ultimate goal is these fighters are going to go home with 9-figure paydays each. The early estimates have, with the 60-40 split, with if they come in on the low end of these estimates, what they expect, it sounds like Mayweather's going to be leaving with $180 million. Pacquiao's going to make 120. That's on the low end. With that $100 price tag in mind, though, and you got to figure that that's going to price a lot of casual boxing fans out of this fight. What do you think the overall buy rate's going to be? Keep in mind that the all-time record is Mayweather versus De La Hoya at 2.4 million buys. Chris.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to exceed that. I really do. I could see it. Yeah, I don't know if it's gonna get to 3 million. I could see it. I could see it certainly approaching 3 million, though. I really do think that's the case, because this is, look, you look at it. This is the sporting, to this point, outside of the Super Bowl, this is what everybody's talking about. I mean, anywhere that ESPN is talking about it every day. Fox Sports 1 is talking about it. You can go online and find coverage of the fighters in the upcoming fight anywhere you look online. This is something that I think a lot of people are going to be very, very interested in, and I think it's going to be, you're going to have a lot of people that say they aren't going to buy it, right now, 5 days out, but come Saturday and come fight night, everybody's going to be wanting to see what is going on with that match, and I think you're going to get a lot of people kind of at the last minute sneaking in. I see it exceeding De La Hoya Pacquiao, and I think it gets around 3 million. If it were to exceed that, I wouldn't necessarily be shocked. I'd be shocked just because there's that many people that are tuning in, but I wouldn't be shocked because of the hype and what it has been built up to be to this point.
So, Chris, you think that the number of viewers, the number of subscriptions are going to exceed the already 2.4 million of Mayweather De La Hoya?
Yep.
Okay, I think if we're playing lines right now, 2.4 is the push. Let's make it 2.6 to meet some more of a happy medium for your 3 million. I'm taking the under. RJ and Chris, you touched on this a little bit. The price point is going to push a lot of people out. A lot of people out. So what's going to happen is that because of that, and we just mentioned it just earlier, where you're going to have a lot more people gathering up and paying for and pitching in for a single subscription. And that's going to lower the number of subscriptions. So the number of households tuning into this fight, the number of TVs turning into this fight and purchasing this fight are going to be lower. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that the overall total purse and the total how lucrative this fight is going to be less than that. In fact, I suspect it to be at least 1.5 to 2 times the amount of that 2007 fight. So, in that sense, yes, it's definitely going to well exceed the total amount of revenue that it's going to generate. However, for the number of people that are going to watch by number of TVs, that's going to be under. I'm looking at more of the 2.3 to 2 million range.
That's interesting because right now the early estimates for the card are between 3 and 4 million viewers is what they're anticipating at this point.
No,
as far as subscriptions.
I believe it. I mean, think about how long this has been in the works for. I mean, this has been the most talked about fight since both of those guys were kind of at their peaks. You could still argue that Floyd is at his peak, but Manny has taken some losses. One was a very controversial loss, and so it's hard to really hang that on him. But I mean, even when this fight wasn't, was dead to rights, this was still the most talked about fight out there. This is what boxing is hoping, brings it back, is Mayweather Pacquiao. And you're going to have a lot of people wanting to tune in because there has been so much back and forth. And are they going to fight? Aren't they going to fight? Drama for a long time now. I think you're just going to have people wanting to cash in, or not cash in, but at least lay their money down and make sure that they don't miss it, because it will be kind of the event of the year.
All right, guys. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Josh.
I was just gonna say, on the ride home, my wife made an interesting point. This is the biggest fight of our generation, and people are gathering merely for that point. And with that understanding, I definitely do understand where people are willing to pay to see the fight. I'm just not thinking that they're willing to go out of their way to subscribe to viewing. That, that's
Fair
it.
enough. Fair enough. I mean, I understand. Laying $100 down for a single family, that's a tough sell to your wife. Even if your wife is a sports fan, I mean, that. Honey, I'm gonna spend $100 to watch a 42-minute fight.
Yes, and this is the last you'll ever see me on Sidelines, so thank you very much.
Yeah, you know what I mean. It's what I found interesting though is I was looking at some numbers. One of the things that really jumped out at me is if they're hitting this number and Floyd does in fact make the $180 million, if the fight goes the distance, that comes down to he's making $5 million per minute in the ring. I mean, just wrap your head around that. That's ridiculous.
I'm in the wrong business. I'm gonna go put some gloves on, go get hit real quick, and then I'll be back and I'll let you guys know how it went.
All right, guys. Big question now. Josh, who wins and why?
Okay. I have Mayweather winning this fight only due to the possible and plausible impatience of Pacquiao. But let's throw all the physicality out of the window for a second. Let's talk about why Mayweather is going to win no matter what. Okay, so everyone needs to pray for a draw because no one may be able to enter Vegas for a while if either side wins. I was in Vegas about 2 years ago for a recent fight that happened on Cinco de Mayo, and possibly half the plane had some type of injury as a result of a fight or a scrum that happened outside. So we don't want this to come down to people deciding who won in the ring outside the ring. Look at it this way. Manny either is going to get outpointed by Floyd simply because Floyd likes to run, and Manny let me take that back. Manny actually outpoints Floyd. Floyd wants a rematch. Manny's going to end up losing out because of that. There's going to be a lot bigger deal. Everything's going to go more against Manny. Manny might end up losing because Floyd's is going to be a little bit more aggressive in that rematch. Or Mayweather's going to knock out Manny simply because that's just how they want it to go. Either way, I think Manny's going to lose this fight simply just for the storyline. And there are people willing to pay upwards of 10 grand for this fight. Let's keep that in mind. So if they let this go the distance and it goes to anywhere near a draw, this is going to scream rematch. And forget all the numbers that you see right now. Forget all the numbers that you see beforehand. This is going to be a storyline that people are going to want to make movies out of. So for that same reason, and you want to make a movie out of this, you want Manny to lose slightly, come back in his last hurrah, knock out Floyd Mayweather in a rematch.
Well, it's honestly tough to see Manny Pacquiao knocking out Floyd Mayweather because it just hasn't happened. It's also really tough for me to see Floyd Mayweather knocking out Pacquiao because that's not really Floyd's game. He doesn't really knock people out. He, like Josh says, he kind of outpoints people. Honestly, I can see this being a draw, and I don't know if that's what you really want to hear, RJ. But if you're looking for one person if I have to pick, it's going to be Floyd. But I think this is I think really what's going to happen is that you're going to see a draw. I think you're going to see a lot of people who are unhappy who are going to say, "Hey, Floyd won," or Pacquiao won, and then you're going to have all the hype and the build up for a potential rematch. Now, see, when you look at it through that lens, it's going to be really interesting to see kind of what these two fighters decide they want to do. Is one fight enough? If it ends in a draw, is that the way it's supposed to end, or do we have to do this all over again? A year from now or a year and a half from now, and say, hey, we need to figure out who really is the better fighter here. I shudder to think if there was a second draw, and I know I'm putting the cart before the horse here, but I just don't see there being a clear, decisive winner. I think Pacquiao is going to be too prepared going into this fight. Mayweather is going to be prepared, and so it's really tough for me to see either guy getting outclassed. I think you're going to have a split decision type thing going on, and it's going to be one of those things. Do we want a rematch? Do people want to see a rematch? Was the first fight enough that it is kind of wetting the palate for that second go around?
Boxing. Go ahead, RJ.
I think for me, the fight is going to be, as a fan watching the fight, I think you're going to know within those first 4 rounds what's going to happen. The first 4 rounds will dictate the fight, because if Manny Pacquiao is able to come out and get Floyd Mayweather off balance with his speed and aggression, and get him off his game a little bit, then I think the scale tilts in Pacquiao's favor. But Floyd, who does start slow from time to time because he's great at feeling out his opponents, but by that 4th round, if Floyd hasn't gotten into his rhythm, then it's time to start worrying. But I suspect he will be in his rhythm by that point. And if you see him start to tag Manny and see Manny missing a lot on his punches, then end of the fight, it's going to be Floyd with his hand raised. I think those first 4 rounds are going to dictate how the rest of the fight plays out.
Marquez versus Pacquiao. 6 rounds.
Yep.
Pac has first 4. Marquez gets tagged in the 5th. Marquez is set up for this plausible knockout, which I haven't seen Manny knock anyone out, because his opponents that he has been, I wouldn't say terrible, but it has a horrible time at knocking him down and making him back up against have had chins. Bradley, Cotto.
Yeah.
6 rounds. 6 rounds. And you think that maybe Pacquiao is going to knock this guy out, it's a question of when. And he gets caught reaching. All jokes aside, if Manny gets anywhere near into a repeatable rhythm and gets a little bit too anxious, and Floyd does get into his rhytm where he's bobbing and weaving now and he's getting very accurate punches in, Pacquiao's done.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing, because I think Floyd is going to dictate how this fight is fought. I mean, that's what he does. That's what he's always done. And so it's going to come down. I think that's where the fight gets decided. Can Pacquiao fight like that? Can he kind of go toe to toe and play Floyd's game, and still get his hits in, and still kind of point for point match him? Because Floyd's going to get his. You know that he's gonna execute. It's a matter of does Pacquiao have the discipline to stay in the ring and do those types of things with Floyd?
I think one thing to keep in mind, guys, when we're talking about Pacquiao's discipline and him getting a little off kilter, you gotta factor in the Freddie Roach effect. Freddie Roach is arguably the greatest boxing mind in the sport today, and perhaps ever. When you're talking about boxing IQ and fight IQ and understanding how to play to a fighter's strengths and break down an opponent, he's going to make in-ring adjustments with Manny. And if Manny responds to Freddie Roach's coaching in the fight, that could be a deciding factor here.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So.
Okay.
All right, guys. Well, I appreciate the time. Thank you for joining us. Join us here in just a couple of minutes as we gear up for our Sidelines episode 3.3 as we discuss the NBA playoffs.